Namaskar and welcome Sunder Rajan ji. Would like to welcome to the session and namaskar to all the members who have joined for today's session. So before starting the session, just reiterating the NAHA's objective in very brief is that we see NAHA as an advocacy group that enhances the well-being of Hindus in Canada and North America to a larger extent. Now, in pursuit of that objective, it's also very important that we have the knowledge of Hinduism. So keeping that in mind, NAHA has organized a series of talks. So we plan to have this on a weekly basis, probably every Tuesday, 7 to 8 p.m. Pacific time. So today is the first session, and I'm happy to have Sunder Rajan ji with us to give his talk. Now, in his own words, Sunder Rajan ji's background is with Vedas, Upanishads, Arthashastras, Bhagavad Gita, and Ramayana. So I am sure this will be an exciting session for us, all of us. And so the format of the session is Sunder Rajan ji will have a small presentation during which he'll be happy to take any clarifications which members may have regarding the presentation. But as far as Q&A is concerned, we will have a detailed Q&A session after Sundarji's presentation. So that's how we are planning to do it. So again, welcoming Sundarji. Over to you, Sunder Rajan ji. Thank you.
Thank you, Ji. Hari Om, and hope everybody can hear me. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Sounds good.
Okay. So I just want to take a minute to just thank NAHA. And the topic that we're presenting today is, in my opinion, a very important one. And as we go through, you'll understand why I'm saying that. Mainly because, especially living in Canada, we see that the younger generation is the second generation Canadians, and they are slowly either acculturated or moving away from Hinduism because they have a muddled understanding of India and Hinduism. So the culture is basically Mandir Jao, Ganti Bajao, Prashad Kao type. So we want to get away from that. And the case that I'm presenting to you today is purely my perspective. And I do not claim to be an expert or an academic. I just want to say that. It's not an academic's perspective of India. It is an emic or an Hindu's perspective of Indian culture. The current perspective or the perceptions that our kids have is India is about caste, curry, and cows. And we'll prove in this discussion, or at least during the discussions, we'll see if it is just that, or is there something beyond just the three combinations or three C's. And we'll also see or get an insight into the glory of India that I could see from my perspective, and what we can do to move forward by connecting back to our roots. Having said that, I would like to draw basically on the NAHA forum, there was a quiz that was sent out. It was about Ramayana. And I'm just going to ask questions about how well you know Ramayana and give you necessary or the right quotes from the Ramayana as to whether your perception is right or wrong. The first question was, did Lakshmana sleep during Vanvas? I think many of you said false. I think one said true, but most of it was false. Let's see that. So in the Aranyakanda, it is very clearly, unequivocally said that Lakshmana was sleeping without a break as the night passed away, and Rama wakes him up. Ataratriyam vyatitayam avasuktam anantaram. Anantaram means it is without a break, right? So that's something we always think Lakshmana did not sleep for 14 years. And we'll see if there are other things that we have mistaken about Ramayana. The next question was, after killing Maricha, Rama hunted a spotted deer, packed its meat, and took it home, right? Many of you said false. And this comes again in the chapter itself where he kills Maricha. The very next line or the end of the chapter ends with Raghava, which is the scion of Raghu dynasty, killed another spotted deer. And the word here is Prushatam. Prushatam means spotted. And he killed it, Nihatya, Mamsamadaya Raghavaha. He takes it home. How many of you knew that? I can't see the chat, but I hope you're typing it in the chat whether you see it or not. Third one, Hanuman tried to commit suicide. This is a big word. And actually, he was contemplating suicide when he failed the mission. He thought he failed the mission. So Hanumanji burns Lanka down. And then he regrets, thinking in the process of burning Lanka, I might have burnt Sita Mata as well. So he thinks that he had ruined the mission. He was sent to find Sita Mata, and in the process, he completely ruined the mission by killing her also. In that state of mind, it's basically at least 7 or 8 shlokas. I just captured 2. It says that if this task has been spoiled because of my negligence or perverted intelligence, I want to give up my life. Then he talks about multiple ways, which is, should I jump into fire? Should I jump into underwater volcano? Or should I feed myself to marine animals? It goes on and go. At one point, the Charanas are one type of divine beings. They come as birds, and they assure him that Sita Mata is fine and intact. And it is because of her that Hanuman's own tail did not burn or give him heat. Then Hanuman is assured. I don't know how many of you knew that. Fourth one, Lakshman Rekha. This is a very famous statement, or most of us talk about Lakshman Rekhas. But when it comes to Valmiki Ramayana, there is no mention of the Rekha in itself. When Sita Mata asks Lakshmana to go and check on Rama, he says, I will go, and may the Vanadevatas protect you. And he leaves. There is no drawing of a line and asking her not to cross and all those things. When Ravana comes, there is a conversation between Sita Mata and Ravana, and she actually invites and feeds him. So this whole thing about the Lakshman Rekha came in Kamba Ramayana and later in Tulsidas Ramayana, nothing in Valmiki. And then I had a question about Sanjeevani mountain. All of us know that Hanuman bought the Sanjeevani mountain. That's clear. Question was, did he fly once, go back, replace it, again fly back second time? The answer is yes. So first time was in the Yuddha Kanda, chapter 74. This is when Rama, Lakshmana, and the entire Vanaras, they are, so basically Indrajit defeats, or not defeats, but fells the entire Vanara army. And everybody is down with arrows pierced on, like, head to toe. There are only 2 survivors or 2 people who are intact. One is Vibhishana, the other is Hanuman. And in the night, they go around with a torch in their hand, not the battery torch, but torch in the hand, trying to find survivors. And Vibhishana finds Jambavan, and Jambavan asks, the first question he asks, is Hanuman alive? If Hanuman is alive, we are all alive. If he is dead, then we are all gone. And Hanuman is alive, and Jambavan asks him to bring these 4 herbs. So they are Mrita Sanjeevani, Vishalyakarani, Suvarnakarani, and Sandhani. And this is from the Rishabha mountain. Hanumanji flies. The entire chapter describes that. There is no Kalanemi either. He goes, finds the herbs, brings it back, and he goes and replaces it. He puts the mountain back. Then again, 25 chapters later, in when Ravana throws a spear, Lakshmana is injured. So Hanuman again goes and gets a different mountain called the Aushadhi. It's Aushadhi Parvata. And it's the same 4 herbs, but he goes back a second time. So the answer is true for this also. Next is Sita Mata flew in a Pushpak Viman to see the battle between Rama and Ravana. This is a gray area because the question I had posed in itself was a bit confusing. But the answer is yes. She did fly when Rama and Lakshmana were felled by, or were unconscious in the battlefield. Ravana asks the Rakshasis to take her in a Pushpak Viman and give her a tour. This is psychological warfare. So she goes, and here it's very interesting. She sees Rama and Lakshmana lying unconscious on the ground. The limbs were pierced with arrows, riddled with weapons. And what I found interesting is their armor was shattered, which means they were wearing armor and not just the cloth they show in Ramayana. So they had armor, and seeing this, she thinks that they are both dead, and then she cries and sobs. This is a psychological warfare by Ravana on Sita Mata. Next question is, Rama did not ask Sita Mata to enter Agni-Pariksha. This is one of the most difficult areas of the entire Ramayana. If you read these two chapters, your blood will boil. So the answer is, no, he did not actually ask her to enter fire. He gave her liberty to go anywhere she wants. But the way he said it, it was so hurtful that Sita Mata said, okay, you've given me a choice to go wherever I want, so I will go into fire. Hey, Lakshmana, light the fire. So if he had said yes or no, you get points, because technically he did not ask her. But the way he spoke, she chose to go into fire. So I've given links to all the shlokas or chapters at the end. So after this, I'll send it out via WhatsApp to the group. So is that good? Yeah. And then there was a question on Rama meeting Dasharatha after killing Ravana and before returning to Ayodhya. Many said it's false, but it actually happened. So the entire series was pretty much trick question where most, like all of it was true, except for the gray ones. Okay, so what happens is Mahadeva comes down and tells Rama that Dasharatha is indeed in the Vimana. So Rama sees Dasharatha or Dasharatha sees Rama, and they have a conversation back and forth. Very interesting part is it's not just a spirit form. Dasharatha actually places Rama on his lap and embraces him with his arms. And this is there in Yuddhakanda chapter or Sarga 119, right? And he talks about, the afterworld and all those things. He says how even heaven is not, doesn't bring him happiness as much as seeing Rama does. So the chapter itself is beautiful to read. I won't go into details because I want you to read it. And that's the whole aim. By bringing these questions and exposing, the facts that we did not know, it's one of the efforts to make you read Ramayana and learn Ramayana for yourself, rather than, just watching teleserials and getting our information from third-party sources. Next is that there was no Swayamvara for Sita. This is known. Most people mistake what happened as Swayamvara. If you look at Valmiki Ramayana, there is a record of multiple kings coming at multiple times and trying to lift the Shivadanush. However, it is not Swayamvara. Swayamvara is where a princess is allowed to choose her own suitor. So in this case, it was called Virya Shulka. Virya Shulka is what do you call it? A presentation given or a bounty given to somebody who has accomplished a task. So this word Virya Shulka repeats itself on multiple times, showing that it was never a Swayamvara. And the last question was, Hanumanji never used a gada or a mace weapon. Technically, the answer is no. Even though we see Hanumanji's gada and they are inseparable in our mind. Whenever you see Hanumanji, there's a gada. But he used bare hands, boulders, and trees. And this was the rule from Rama's side when he attacks Ravana. The rule is, except for Rama and Lakshmana, nobody else will use any other weapons except for boulders and trees. The entire Vanar Sena will be using just that. Occasionally, even during the burning of Lanka, Hanumanji uses what is called a parigam. Parigam is an iron rod. So he uses a parigam, but he never owns one or he never walks around with one. This is, if there is one, he just picks it and bashes people. That's it. There is no mention of gada used by Hanuman. Ravana uses a gada, but not Hanuman. Okay. So there is no reference link here because I cannot prove what is not written. So you'll have to read the entire Ramayana to find out if there is a gada or not. Okay. And at the end of it, I just want to show you something, that the picturization of, can you see my mouse moving? Okay. So the picture in the middle is the Rama that we're accustomed to. But the more and more you read Valmiki Ramayana, Rama's character portrayal will remind us of either on the left or right side, like very, he's a king through and through, and he's a man through and through. He's a man's man. So that is the portrayal. And what I want to prove with this is there is a lot of cultural whitewashing that has been done to portray Rama as a very effeminate person who is, very soft, too soft, which is not what Valmiki had intended in the first place. Any questions on that, or we carry on? Now the actual presentation begins. So we want to see, on a drawing on the parallel, we want to see how India is a civilization that's lost in open daylight. Now, I want to begin with a snapshot of India in the last 100 years. So this is 2020. Let's start with 1920. So in the early 1900s and 1920s, we were serving the British Raj. And as you see, British Raj was stable by that time, and we had a lot of Indians serving the British Raj. In 1930s, and that was the normal way. So on the one side, you had the freedom struggle going on the other side, you had Indians themselves in the army. And then came Bengal famine in the 30s. 1947, you had the partition. 50s and 60s were dedicated more to development. I'm loosely correlating this. This is not exactly 50s and 60s. It might have started a bit before. And then when I was a kid, I remember standing in kerosene lines and, ration lines and all those things. So it was system quota permit Raj all through 70s and 80s. In the 90s came liberalization. And then, my kids' generation sees that India has got more theme parks and shopping malls and all. So we have come a long way from, country that was struggling to a country that's now emerging and growing. My question to you, again, Jagdish, you can see the chat, or if somebody responds, it'll be great. Has life gotten better? I wouldn't say really. Has life gotten better? And how much do you think is the progress that India has made in the last 100 years? Anything on chat?
Not yet. Yeah.
Okay, if not, no worries. I think
Okay.
Second question is, am I speaking too fast, or is the pace okay?
Yeah, members can comment in the chat if they feel it's fast or slow, or if they have anything.
Girish Chandra
Okay.
has put a comment on it. Very interestingly, great press. Gorakhpur translates Nityananda Parashuram. Shaman, I will actually probably unmute Girish Chandra. That would
Okay,
really
that is, I'll take that in the question, but this is more to do with the current slide.
Right, yeah. So people are saying that, based on availability and economic development, yes, there has been a growth.
Okay. The way I see it, India has gone from serving one foreign nation to currently serving multiple foreign nations. It is progress, but really, is it progress? Because when I look at it, or what we'll start seeing is, what is the legacy that we are leaving for our kids and grandkids and our future generations 1,000 years from now? Are they going to be remembering us by our call centers? So, was India always a service-oriented nation? To take a look at this, I want to take you back to something, one of my favorite topics is Angus, Madisson, and the world GDP comparison. Most of you might have already seen it. If not, a quick intro is the interest for this project came from the West was looking at India and China growing after 1990s. But India and China are predominantly fatalistic society, meaning they believe in karma. Whereas the US is capitalistic. So ambition and greed is important for growth, or that is the idea. So the question was, how can fatalistic societies grow or emerge? And they gave a project to Angus Madisson, who did a survey, a study of last 2,000 years of world GDP or world economy across cultures or across countries. What surprisingly came out was for the first 1,000 years, from 180 to almost 1050 AD or 1000 AD, India was at the top, number one, with almost 30 to 35% of the world GDP, followed by China. So China was like 25-ish, I don't know the exact numbers, but they were dominant for the first 1,000 years, or actually for the first 1,750, so almost 1750 years. And then they started falling to almost like 2-3% of the world GDP. Now, I'll present this. So the last, again, the question, Jagdish, you can help me, is can you see my mouse move? Can you see where I'm pointing?
Yes.
Okay, good. So if I take this slice and move it up, it'll be looking something like this. So the first 1,000 years, then the 750 years, and then from 1700 to 1900. So the 200 years, the economy just started shrinking exponentially, or the other opposite of exponentially, shrinking till it became like a 2% economy. Okay. Now my question to you was, what happened during this time? I'll go back to the slide. So India was at the top. Then for 750 years, from 1080 to about 1750, India was invaded, looted, pillaged. There were murders and money was carried away, but still it was top, number one. And then around this time, East India Company came, 1750-ish. So from 1800 to 1900, so in 100 years, 4 generations, India went from being one of the topmost, right here, to almost nothing, like 2% of the world economy. So what did we lose in this 100 years that we had in this 150 years, 750 years? Anybody in chat? Or it'll be easier if people can unmute themselves, but the answer is India lost its indigenous learning centers, meaning there were 2 things that the British did. Again, this discussion is only to portray India and not to talk about other cultures negatively, but just to portray India. East India Company had systematically destroyed India's indigenous education system and supplemented that or replaced it with Western education, number one. And second is the industries were destroyed systematically, mainly being the textile and there were many other industries, but textile is one of the prominent one that's known. So with the destruction of that, especially the Gurukulam system and the village education system, as we'll see later, India had forgotten its past. And because it forgot its past, the glory was lost and it could not regenerate its wealth. So in the 700 years here, even though money was taken away or looted, India could regenerate her wealth. I'll give you an example and then you'll understand. Think of a rich man like Ambani or somebody who's really rich. Every day he's robbed. Okay. So $1 million is robbed from him. Or bank account is somebody takes away or swindled. As long as he has the ability to regenerate the money, he or she, the money can be regenerated. But if I knock the person on the head with a stick and he forgets who he is, what happens? They don't know their bank account number, the passbook number. They don't know who they are. They lose their ability to regenerate their money. They've forgotten their capabilities. And this is what happened to a country. So as a civilization in the last 300 years, India has forgotten who she is. And this is the crux of our story. I have a short quiz. Do you know the names of this building, either one, and who built them? I'll give 10-15 seconds. Anybody on the chat?
Okay. Yeah, so I think members can unmute themselves.
Yeah, okay. If you can unmute, just let me know.
Yeah, so members can do that. Yeah. So on the left is Taj Mahal. Yeah.
Very good. Okay, and who built Taj Mahal?
Raja.
Shah
Shah
Jahan.
Jahan. Okay.
Shah
good.
Jahan, but actually it was a temple, right?
Yeah, no, that's fine. But who built it? Shah Jahan.
Shah
Shah
Jahan.
Jahan.
No trick question here. Like, and the right one?
Qutub.
Kutubuddin Aibak.
But actually this was also originally some Vishnu stamp.
Yeah, Jain temple. But who built it?
Kutubuddin Aibak.
Very nice. See,
Yeah.
okay, we have a very educated audience. Nice. Now, what is the name of this building and who built it?
Chashma de to beta.
Both left and right, both are the same structure. Interestingly, this was an inspiration for Lutyens to build the parliament, the design.
Bodh
Oh.
Gaya? Nahi.
No, not Bodh Gaya.
Seen this but forget the name.
Okay.
Some
It's called Chauset Yogini Temple, 64 Yoginis temple. So
Oh.
on the peripheral,
Yeah,
you can
yeah,
see
yeah,
64
yes,
Yoginis.
yes.
And in the middle, you have Mahadeva.
64 pillars, yeah.
And this is basically in Madhya Pradesh. And it's close to Gwalior, about 40 kilometers away from Gwalior. Who built it?
Okay, but Vijayji has replied Raja Bhoj.
No. There are multiple Yogini temples. This is the one from Madhya Pradesh. That's why I'm not the Ujjain one. Okay, it's built by a king called Devapala from Kachapagatha dynasty. This was in 1055. This was easy, right? This was hard.
Yeah.
Okay, how about this? Who can name this place?
Ajanta.
Nope.
Cave.
100,000 years old.
ये मिथिला में होना चाहिए कहीं.
नहीं जी.
Bhimbaktu Cave,
Correct. Bhimbatka.
Madhya Pradesh.
Yes. Bhimbatka. And you can see this probably would have been 10,000-year-old cave paintings. And you see people on warriors on horses going hunting.
The oldest recorded in India.
Correct. So far, yes. And this one, it's a 1,000-year-old port.
This is the one in Gujarat.
Correct.
Lethal.
Close. Lothal. Yeah.
Lothal.
Lothal. Very nice. So we have very nice. Good. But the thing is, how many of us know, right?
Exactly.
So it's hard. The more and more Indian we get, the more and more hard it gets. Okay. Now I'm going to play a game called What We Were Told and What We Weren't Told. It's not a game. It's more of I'm just going to say. So when it comes to mathematics, you would have seen WhatsApp forwards. What we were taught is India's only contribution in math to the world is the number 0. And we go, yay, that's good. So we contributed 0. But really speaking, did you know Pythagoras' theorem was known in India even before, 300 years before Pythagoras? Now, Pythagoras came to India and it's recorded. And he studied in the plain near Ganga from Hindu sages. If you go to Wikipedia also, you'll see that. There was a person called Bodhayana. Bodhayana provided the formula for what is now called Pythagoras theorem. So if you take the rope, and basically he talked about ropes and squares, but the area of a square that's formed with the hypotenuse is equal to the area of the squares formed by the two sides. So he actually proved it. And this was introduced to the Greek by Pythagoras. And it's called Pythagoras theorem. Did you know calculus comes from Kerala? It was Nilakanta Somayaji and the Kerala School of Mathematics. The predecessors of calculus comes from Kerala. And I'll show you a slide related to that. Fibonacci series comes from Vedangas. There is a person called Pingala. Chandas everybody knows, right? Anushtup Chandaha and Trishtup Chandaha, Chandas. So Pingala was one of the primary, the first persons who talked about metadata. And Fibonacci series is coming from that. And this also is used when it comes to Ghanapata and all. The golden quadrilateral also comes under this in the Vedangas. Algebra, trigonometry, binomial equations, these are all were used, not just well known. They're actually applied in ancient India. And how many of you know that 1,000 years before Copernicus, Aryabhatta had documented or had a book called Aryabhatiya. In Aryabhatiya, actually it's not Aryabhatta, it's Aryabhatta. Aryabhatta had a book called Aryabhatiyam, in which he talks about the Earth revolving around the Sun in an elliptical orbit in 365.25 days. And more surprising is it revolves in a very, in a sidereal axis. So I'll just stop share and I'll come back to the share. So can you see me? Okay. So if the Sun is here, on my birthday, I start here, I go around the Sun and comes back to the same position where I started. That's our current thinking, correct? So it goes in a perfect ellipse. What Aryabhatta says is Sun starts here, it goes, sorry, not Sun, Earth starts revolving around the Sun and it keeps moving in a spiral. Why is it moving in a spiral and not a perfect ellipse? Because the Sun is also moving. Think about it. Is the Sun moving around the galaxy or the Sun moving in an orbit? When the Sun is moving, the Earth is also moving along with it. That's called sidereal calculations, sidereal. And it's not, so this was advanced for any day and time, right? It's only 1,000 years later that Galileo and Copernicus, they started talking about heliocentric models. And we are talking about Aryabhatta not even being the first one. He had referred to people even before him, right, in his work. And all this were not taught to us, because it was considered unnecessary. We had to make room for other syllabus. Did you know that, or anybody knew that? Okay, here's the Pingala Chandas, so the Pingala's Maha Mantra, sorry. It's actually Mantra Meru or Maha Meru, and that's how it goes. And calculus. Now, if I tell you, or if a Swamiji tells you, you will not believe it. But if CBC tells you, or National Geographic tells you, you will believe it. So I had to put this in to show calculus was created in India 250 years before Newton. You can actually Google it up. You'll see more of it. Okay. So slowly the West has started accepting it. When I was a kid, all this was, a far and distant dream. Permutation and combination also was well known over 1,000 years ago. So this is Sridharacharya talking about. I have 6 different tastes, the Katva, Amla, Thika and all. Using this, how many combinations can I make and how many different varieties of dishes I can make? There's more of a, not a cuisine culinary question. It's more of a permutation combination question. Bhaskara Raya, you had great mathematicians. We have all forgotten them. Farming. What were we taught? We were told that India's indigenous farming methods are primitive. So we needed to bring in a green revolution to boost the agricultural output.
Yeah.
What is the truth? India, the farming actually traces back to over 9,000 BC, which is 11,000 before present. And according to one rice expert in India, indigenous rice expert, there are over 110,000, 1 lakh, over 1.1 lakh types of rice. And the best that Green Revolution and others can produce, well, 2 types of rice, 2 breeds of rice. I think it's called IR8 and IR16 or something like that. So we knew 110,000, but this shrunk after the Green Revolution. Now we have about 7,000-ish. Most of it is gone. Like we don't even know what kind of rice we had except for documentations. And when the British were here in India, they had records of what is called as a Chengalpad data. There's a person called Dharampal. If you read Dharampal's writing, you'll find a lot of documentations from the British time. It's called a beautiful tree. Probably at some point we can talk about it. But what's of interest here is Chengalpad data actually shows that per hectare, like the farmers of Chengalpad had produced 12 tons of paddy. This is back in the 18th century. Modern measures is about 1.5 to 3 ton average, 6 tons at best. Recently, there is a news article, I'll show it to you a couple slides later. A farmer from Tamil Nadu, if I'm not wrong, produced 24 tons per hectare. There was one in Bihar who produced 22.5, if I'm not wrong. So like 20 plus tons per hectare. And the rice experts said, no, this is not true. Okay, so this is where, like the miracle growers, and here I want to show. So this was challenged by rice scientists in Philippines and China. They claimed that the measurement had to be fake because it's impossible to produce a yield so large, but it's been done. And the particular method here is called SRI. That's of less interest to this discussion. We can talk about it separately. But if you look at the Chengalpat data, the British surveyed over 2,000 villages in Chengalpat, and there were about 12 tons of paddy per hectare. What the article also talks about is the society was dismantled and automized by the British by force. We went from a food surplus society to the Bengal famine, where over almost 30 million people or 3 million people died because of starvation. That was a manufactured famine. Okay. And any of you know this, or have you, we haven't been taught all these things?
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Next one, engineering and architecture and sculptures. What we have been taught is Taj Mahal is the greatest wonder. So every person who comes to India, he has to have a click with the Taj Mahal. I'm not saying Taj Mahal is bad. Taj Mahal is indeed a great wonder. But is that the only wonder we want to see for ourselves? Now, this is not a quiz, so I put in the names of the temples here. This is Kailasha Temple, Kailashnath Temple in Ellora. And this was built about 1400 years ago by a king, Rashtrakuta king called Krishna I. And the uniqueness of this temple is it's a single stone. The entire mountain was carved top down. From the top, they carved it and made a temple out of it. And in spite of trying to be destroyed for 3 years, I think some of the armies took about 3 years to try to destroy it. They couldn't, they gave up. So you can still see structural damage done here, but it's still intact. And this, if not a wonder, I don't know what is. The amount of work that has gone in here, not just here. Indian chisel, as you will see, speaks it speaks volumes of the amount of work and the technology behind what has gone into it. This is Chennakeshwar Temple in Belur, Karnataka. It was built by a king called Vishnuvardhana. And this is just one gate or a gatekeeper called Jaya. So Vishnu has 2 gatekeepers, Jaya and Vijaya. And he is Jaya. And look at the polishing, the details, every bead here, like even tiny pearls or beads, and the amount of work that has gone into each and every aspect is beyond belief. Now, if there is somebody on the chat who can tell me one civilization, just one civilization, whose sculptures and sculptures or the abilities come even close to the Indian sculpture, let me know. This is called Chandauri in Rajasthan. And this is a stepwell for 13 story long. And I think it's 1,700 something steps in all. And the amount of work that's gone into this. So this is not unique, meaning this is a big one, bigger stepwell. And this is a tiny one in some village. We don't even know the names, but look at the precision with which the stones were cut, placed, coordinated. Now we talk about software engine industries who do integration testing. Everything falls apart. Think about the sculptors here and the masons who had worked. And do you think all this would have been possible without people knowing mathematics and the sculptors being uneducated? This needed heavy engineering and mathematical skills. It also needed something called Samudrika Lakshana. Samudrika Lakshana is physiology, understanding of physiology, understanding of each and every aspect and proportion of the human body or animal body. That's Samudrika. It also needed knowledge of the type of stones, right? So it's not just get 3 people walking on the street and ask them to build this, they would be able to build it. So I'm trying to show by the remnants of or the what is left over, how much technology and how much of dedication was there in ancient India to create such marvelous things that are often ignored or even overlooked. We don't even have the time, right? So we are busy with other things that, when we go on a tour, at least we just walk through the buildings without even realizing the magnitude of or the magnanimity of it. This is Rani Ki Vav. Most of you would have known from tourism in Rajasthan. This was created on the behalf of Queen Udayamati or Rani Udayamati of Chalukya dynasty. Look at the intricacy, this amazing. So what I really liked is the attention to detail. If I look at here, there's a monkey playing with this lady right here, or even the saddle of the horse. And these are all not tiny ones. These are all throughout and through. The artist who was chiseling out here may have said, I need more lunch break and I need not create a monkey here. But they did. And that speaks about the dedication and about the professionalism of ancient Indians. What I love about this is lathe machines. Look at all the pillars. They've been carved out using a lathe. Engineering students here would understand what a lathe is. I'll go into it at the question answer session, but not here. So the carving of each of these, it's not an exception. See, every pillar here has been carved using a lathe and then using a chisel. So it's shaped using a chisel. I just fell in love with this particular lathe pillar. The amount of intricacy, the magnitude and everything. And this particular pillar is a hanging pillar of Lepakshi. So this pillar is hanging. It is not on the ground. That's why you see the sari or the cloth beneath the pillar. So there is a space where you can let an entire, sari or paper, you can take it from under the pillar. It's not touching the ground. The rest of the pillars surrounding it are supporting its weight as it's hanging from the roof in a cantilever method. And think of the engineering skill that's gone behind it. And same thing with these, the lathes. Every pillar is a lathe. It's not like a unique technology. It was so common, and all this is forgotten. Politics and statecraft. Now I'll go quickly through this because we are nearing 7:45. We've been taught that democracy was brought to India by the West. Probably, yes. But is that the only thing? Did India ever have anything more than democracy? Sorry, lack of democracy? We'll have to take a look at Kautilya's Arthashastra, which talks about autonomy in the Janapadas. Janapadas are basically more like our current panchayat system. At the village level, there was huge autonomy. And they keep on building. For a few number of Janapadas, then you have a small state. And then you have what do you call it? I forget the word, but it's basically like a municipality and over the municipality. So the structure of the kingdom is purely explained in the Arthashastra. And the policies were all people-centric policies, even tax. When Chanakya talks about how to tax the people, he says the king should tax the people like a butterfly takes nectar from flowers. Without hurting the flower, you should just take the nectar. If you overtax the people or undertax the people, it's a problem. Just tax them the right way. Did you know that Mauryan kingdom or Chanakya's time, documents of passports are available? So passports were there. The passport minister was called Mudradhyaksha. And it was not just a one person. Forgeries were there. So you had a separate unit to track down forgeries and such. You also had defamation lawsuits, forensic analysis, then talks about geopolitics and other things. So Chanakya goes into a detail to paint, to give us a society that existed, say, 2,300 years ago. And he was not the first one. He refers to people even before him, Brihaspati and other people who had done their Arthashastras much before Chanakya. So I'm going to conclude this, bringing us back. So if India or even the world has to go forward, currently the greed-based system, you've seen, the world currently thrives on destroying natural resources to feed the greed of conglomerates. So is this sustainable? And if it's not, what happens? So I'm leaving a question to the younger generation as to, if you want to progress forward, is there a possibility that you can connect back to your roots right here and see what our ancestors have done, take cues from it, and bring it into the new world as a way forward? That's an open question for everybody. What I wanted to talk about, but can't in this, is ancient machines, Dharmic society. But my favorite topic at some point in time will be a comparison of Gurukulam, which was there 1,000 years ago, to the curriculum system that is there now, and see where we have failed. Questions?
Yeah, so participants can raise a hand and they can ask questions themselves, or if
No,
want,
they can
also
ask questions. So I'll unshare. So yeah.
They can actually unmute themselves and ask questions and mute back.
I don't have a question, but a compliment. A brilliant session, Sundar. Nothing less expected of you. So more frequent interaction, more such sessions is something I would love to have.
Thank you. I thought you had a question earlier with the Gita Press.
No, not a question. I have shared this before.
Okay.
The same thing.
Fair enough. Yeah. Okay.
It was very good session. And yes, I'm always delighted to hear you. But of course, it was very good. And if she leaves her TV program to just come and listen to you, you are having an impact on younger generation, which is what you want.
Thank you.
that's true. Yeah.
And Pratyaksha, do you have any questions?
I don't have any questions, but it was really, really interesting. I didn't know like all of the stuff. And
thank you, Sundarji. It was really, I'm so impressed, as usual. Your representations are always very interesting. How can we make it popular among our Indian community, and especially the younger generations? How can we motivate them to see these things that which they don't know, or they sometimes are not aware of?
Mm-hmm. So I think it's the packaging and presentation. So what we do, and correct me if I'm wrong, or I'm going to be very unpopular when I say this. I blame part of it with the parents and also with the way we have the temple system running. So when I walk into a temple on a Sunday, it's very unappealing. It's like I said earlier, it's like Mata Teko, Ganti Bajao, Prashad Kao, and then you leave. But you have to have an involvement. You have to make it exciting. For this generation, especially the younger generation here, they're expecting more. I cannot sit there for 1.5 hours looking at a puja being performed without my involvement, right? You have to have every temple or every meeting that we have should be an opportunity for learning and self-development. Parents can play a major role here because parents themselves sometimes are unaware of a lot of things. So until somebody comes and inspires. So for me, I used to be a hardcore atheist. I don't know if some of you may know this, but when I was a teenager, I was a Rama hater. When Ramayana was running on TV, I used to be supporting Ravana just for the sake of it. I was an atheist, an agnostic. I wanted to disprove Hinduism. I thought rishis were fools with too much time on their hand. But all that changed when I actually took up the task of disproving Hinduism. That's how, I got interested in India. And I went from a naysayer to a believer. When I say believer, in ancient India, a treasure that we are unaware of. Currently, the problem is we don't even know it exists for us to take it and own it up. Like I showed, the education system, I cannot blame the education system. It is what it is. But what happened to my time, like my spare time, what am I doing with it? I can easily read 1 or 2 passages or make it a competition among kids. Who can come up with the most incredulous things that was done by ancient Indians, right? Easier. So how about by next week, tell me one thing that you find fascinating about ancient India. Is that something possible? Oh, Pratyaksha, excellent. Good.
Sundarji, thank you so much for a lovely session. Can we put this recording on a YouTube so that there is a lot larger audience?
I will leave that to NAHA.
Sure,
Okay.
we are doing recording.
Yeah, no, we can certainly do that. Yeah, yeah. We can
So that at least a lot of children around the world, especially back in India, where we have a lot of communist kind of education which has happened in the past. When Sundarji was sharing about being an atheist in his childhood, I was a big secular when I was growing up and I was in college. And I would like openly, talk negative things about Hinduism and our religion and our country. But slowly when I realized that, we had a treasure which was unparalleled. So
Yeah.
a lot of children need education on that. And then, so probably putting on YouTube and a larger would be a good idea.
And yeah, that is so true. And same thing, it is so interesting. You showed the example, Taj Mahal and Qutub Minar. Those are so popular. And Ellora, that
Kailashnath.
Kailash, yeah, it is not. And it is a beautiful, beautiful architecture. So again, this is the thing. I think there is a fault in our tourism, in our, so many other aspects where these things, Qutub and Taj, has become so centered to tourists, but not the other places. Yeah. So somehow YouTube would be good, or if we get the recording, we can also spread this to whosoever we know, just for education.
Yeah, absolutely. Any other questions or comments?
Hi, my name is Purnima. I'm actually in the US. I have a question.
Sure.
It was a brilliant session. Thank you so much. The graph you showed, 1,000 years India was flourishing. We had 30% of GDP, and then we went down after British. If you could bring that slide back, I had a question.
Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay.
So where everything goes down, it's not just India that goes down.
No, I'll show you the other graph that will make it clear.
Okay.
That is a close-up of the last, because the longer graph, this is you're seeing only the small part. So
correct. So
here,
I'm just looking at
you see
where
US has
went
gone
down.
up. So you see US has gone up from 1700 to up, and you see what is this one? Germany and where you go, Japan. They've gone up after 1940s. Japan has gone up, and Russia has gone up. So the thing is, you're right. So the squishing is, so basically what I'm saying is the depletion that happened in this time frame is not because of industrial age, as it's wrongly believed. It's because of the destruction of native or indigenous Indian markets or Indian capabilities. For India, introducing a new language is not a problem at all. Like English language, bring in English, German, and Finnish, no problem. Because Indians, with the languages, they can speak any language they want. And they were already trading all the way from Rome to Bali. Their markets were huge. And we are essentially traders who used to go out and make a living and come back. And here, for example, one of the famous example is Daga Muslim. When the British tried to sell us corduroys, which were very coarse, India had no market for it, because we were so used to the Daga Muslim, which is very fine. So they had to cut off the fingers of all the Daga Muslim makers, the weavers.
Right.
Similarly, the farmers were also asked not to plant certain crops and plant indigo, which was used more in Europe. So this is willful impoverishment of a country was pretty much a state policy. I might be wrong or out of line here because I'm not an academic, but this is a subjective perspective.
Right, that's very, very interesting. And then some of the history that you shared, is there anything, because I write a lot and there are a lot of questions about, we have data to prove that our civilizations, at least Harappa and Mohenjo-daro, is 3000 BC. So it's about 5600 years old. But in general, we speak Indic civilization is much older, 24,000, 90,000 perhaps. Is there any proof that we can even show? Is there anything that you can send us later on, perhaps? Any proof beyond that time frame?
If you're looking for written, so basically when I say documentary evidence, India has traditionally been an unscripted civilization. So when the Vedas were initially not composed, but the Mantradrashtas got the Vedas or translated the Vedas, it was a very, by word of mouth. So scripts came much later. So for documentation, all we have to rely currently is on cave paintings, and if there is any left, Shilasasanas. So, and rock edicts, right? So if I come across those kind of things, I will send it to you. But recently, I think there has been excavations around in UP. So they found some chariot wheels and all. I can also send you details on Iron Age. So the traditional Iron Age currently is about 800 BC-ish. Whereas you have excavations from Kadapa, which is in Telangana or Andhra. So from Kadapa, where you have iron knives dating back to, I think, 3200 BC. So, and the Iron Age is actually being pushed back in India. And things like Wood's, W-O-O-T-Z, Wood's steel, was also found in India only. Basically, it originated in India, or the technology originated in India. So I can send you all these things. I just need your contact.
Yeah, that'll be great.
Okay.
Thank you.
I was going to just jump in with that previous question about the graph. So the graph is actually, that's more like an analytical question. So what she is asking is, everyone is decreasing. She's looking at the major players. That dip is due to the increase in GDP from rest of the world. So the world opened up. So the cumulative, the graph actually shows the cumulative. So what you see is the dip in the major, the focused countries right there, but rest of the world open up. For example, the Middle East. So they were negligible. They were not even in the picture before. So those things came into picture. That's why you see more of a dip all through the big countries. And secondly, I was going to talk about the education system that you touched upon. So one of the ways to learn the true interpretation, I mean, not the true interpretation, whatever the truth that is written, is to read the text in its original form and original language. For example, it all depends on the aptitude and attitude of the person rather than blaming on rest of the society, etc. Because even UBC has original Arthashastra copies in Sanskrit. So Asian Library has a lot of copies of say Agamas, everything. So you are free to go read them. So, but if you read the translations in say in the newer languages, so whatever people write, so they're already biased from their own education and how they interpret a language. For example, if something is written in Sanskrit, you would rather read it in Sanskrit. Not if something is written in Tamil or Kannada, you would read it in Kannada, because that is what the original person did. And then comes, why don't we don't know that language? Yes, the education system could be, say, for example, there is a Pathshala system in India. You talked about going to temples and not seeing the meaning of what is happening, because that has been obliterated. The Pathshala system basically walks you through that Guru Shishya Parampara, right? So there you learn not only the Sanskrit, the versions, or whatever the language you have, you also go through the actual language education, because say most of the Vedas are predating Paniniya grammar. So you still need to have a good understanding, a teacher who would tell you that.
Correct.
If you don't have it, go by the teacher that knows the actual language, right?
Absolutely. There is no substitute for a parampara based system. And currently we thrive, or when I say we, people thrive on translated base, and which is dangerous. It's not just the translation of the meaning. You need to have the context also. Because shlokas written in Sanskrit could mean multiple things based on the context you have. So a traditional or a parampara based teacher can tell you. So you absolutely nailed it, Raghavji.
So I think we don't have any question, at least on the chat, and I think we are up with the time as well. So just a couple of things. Yeah, somebody wants to say something. Hello.
This is Purnima. If you don't mind, if I
Sure.
could ask one quick question.
Sure, please go ahead.
You know how India has been, taken over, right? Yoga has been taken over. Yellow milk, the turmeric milk has been taken over. They're selling it as a golden milk. All sorts of inventions has been taken over. We're not going to fix it in a overnight.
Sure.
Gurukul isn't going to start overnight either. What can we do right now, Sundarji, if you don't mind, just guide us from wherever possible, whichever path we're walking right now. What can we do right now to impact?
Okay, so the taken over is a secondary aspect. Like basically, if somebody is adopting or taking and acculturating, plagiarizing. So when you say taken over, it's more plagiarism than adaptation. So I would take that as a second priority. The first priority is build up yourself. Basically, equip yourself at least with the knowledge of what we have lost before we go after what we have. So even mathematics, as I showed before, most of the kids who are going to school today would not be knowing that the mathematics they read is from India and not from Europe or other places. Fair enough, like other mathematicians have taken it, but the credit has not gone to India. But I'm less worried about that than the erosion that's happening, meaning because I am ignorant of what's there, I give my son or my daughter 3% of what I know. They give it to their kids 2% of what they know, and the rest is lost in TV time. So what's happening is with each successive generation, we are losing more and more of this parampara. And when we are not using it and somebody else adapts it, there is no reason for us to cry. First thing is we should increase our capability or right, or arhata, to say, yes, this is rightfully mine, by first practicing or understanding what is, what your ancestors have given you. What do you call it? Apna, what is it? Baap dada ka hai or something like that, right? It is our amanat. It is our the treasures that have been, that's what it is. So the thing is, I cannot say, don't stop using yoga when I myself am not doing yoga. Then you're stopping others from benefiting out of it. Let them benefit. But when you have the ability to say, I have found something, so now I've stabilized it. Now India, if everybody in India start doing yoga and they perfect it to an art, then they have the ability to control it. Same as what China is doing with Kung Fu. Now I cannot go and say, this is my Chinese medicine. I have to finally fall back to what they say, because they have an authority over it. We don't. The reason we don't have an authority is because my past has been stolen away from me. As simple as that.
Right. I think this was excellent, Sundarji. This was very inspirational, and I'm sure a lot of us would look forward to. And fortunately, as we have planned, this is going to be a bi-weekly session by Sundarji, and we are also planning to have one more member contribute to this, which again will be bi-weekly. So essentially, the idea is to have one session, by different members every week. And we are targeting a Tuesday as the day, and generally about 7 to 8 p.m. Pacific time. That's how the plan is, so that we don't lose the track of it, and we are continuously engaged in these sessions, which definitely is good. And one more thing was that as one of the slides said, how do we encourage or inspire the youngsters back to our roots? So I think these sessions would definitely play a major role in doing that. Lastly, we will try to put up the presentation which was shared by Sundarji today. We will try to share it with the participants, if we can do that. And also we will try and put up the recording of the today's session on YouTube, so that it can be shared to a larger audience, and in a way help us achieve what we want to through this medium. So with that, I would like to thank Sundarji for this wonderful session, and we look forward to the next section, which could be after 2 Tuesdays, but for sure we have a session coming up next week as well. We will disclose the information at the right time during the week. Thank you so much, Sundarji, for that.
Thank
Namaskar.
you. Namaskar.